What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel, and today I have a very exciting video for all of you rogues out there that play World of Warcraft Classic, and also pretty much anyone that wants to get better at min-maxing in World of Warcraft Classic. Now, you might sometimes see that there's some people out there in the world that are doing some ridiculous numbers on different bosses, like almost 3,000 damage on Veil and 2,000 damage on Razorgore, so on and so forth. And you're kind of always wondering, like, what are they doing differently than what I'm doing? How can I improve without asking someone specifically? And today I'm gonna break that down and show you guys by us going through together 3 of the best rogues in the world in World of Warcraft Classic. And before we get into it, as usual, if you like this sort of content, please make sure to like and subscribe. My name is Sarth, and let's do this. The first rogue that we're going to look at is arguably the best rogue in World of Warcraft Classic, and that is going to be Justwoo. He was the #1 rogue in Parses in Phase 1 and 2, and now he's number 18 right now in Phase 3 and 4. One thing really fast, actually, before we get into it, there is a huge difference between a parse and a speedrun, and I'll go over that in another video. But be aware that if you are not running parse runs, it is going to be hard sometimes to compete with the very, very best, because those people are using all of their cooldowns on every fight. They're waiting so that they have all of their cooldowns back up instead of going for the fastest speed possible, and we're going to go over one of those in a minute. So as we're about to get into it, I'm going to hide my camera so you guys can just look at the logs itself, and you don't have to just look at me talking, but you'll be able to see exactly what I would look at if I'm going over logs. And here we are. Justwoo, you can look that he's got multiple hundred parses, which is the best parse in the world for that week specifically. And his best average is 99.9, which is absolutely amazing. His median average is 99.4, which is also unreal. But his guild does do parse runs, be aware of that. They're consistently putting up the best numbers possible, but they do also do parse runs, which takes more time in the raid. We're going to go over, first off, his 100 parse on Razorgore, which he has 2 of, actually, and the first one was quite a bit ago, March 9th. Clicking right on it, Justwoo does so much more damage than anyone else. You can see that all of these are still 99 parses, down at 1300 DPS, also a 99 parse. So you can see, like, the biggest difference between 100 parse and a 99 parse on average is pretty massive. All he uses for his DPS is his melee, Sinister Strike, and Eviscerate, which is just an obvious thing, right? He's a sword rogue. That's pretty easy and pretty basic. We can also look at his crit percentage, which is 58.6, which is pretty nice. His average hit damage and the DPS he got specifically from his melees, he got almost 1300 DPS just from melee attacks. And then for his normal Sinister Strikes, he got 44.4% crit, and he used 2 different eviscerates with both crit. So a lot that goes into the very, very best parses in the world can take a good RNG. He only missed 3.33% of all of his melee swings, which actually ended up being only one of his melee swings. So the first thing we're going to notice, really, if we're looking at the damage done, is that he DPSs this boss instantly. Within the first split second of the boss being targetable, he's already Sinister Striking. So he's not waiting any time whatsoever to wait for a tank to get aggro or for the boss to position. He's just automatically attacking the boss. You can see his 2 eviscerates over here, and both of them crit. Almost 3,000 damage here and almost 4,000 damage on the first one, which is pretty massive as well. The boss fight was only 17 seconds, as we can look right here, and that is really good for RNG because you just need some good crits and you're going to do extremely well as long as you have a perfect rotation, which we're going to go into in 1 second. The other things I want to show is that his auras show that he used Adrenaline Rush, Blade Flurry, Crusader procced, he had Slice and Dice, obviously, and Wind Fury Totem. But that's actually not all he has. If we look at his buffs, he has True Shot aura up the entire time, which is from having a hunter in your group, and then also Furious Howl from having a wolf pet on that hunter. As for the buffs as well, he actually gets the Crusader proc right at the beginning. There's 3 different Crusader procs, but he gets really lucky where his Crusader procs almost instantly. Almost all of this fight, he has Crusader, Adrenaline Rush, and Blade Flurry up because it's only a 17-second fight. The first thing I'm going to look at is going to be his casts, which also there's the restore energy here from the Thistle Tea, so I'm just going to enable that as well. Instantly, he uses a Sinister Strike, then he's going to Slice and Dice at the very beginning. Next is going to be his pop of Adrenaline Rush, Blade Flurry, and Blood Fury, all at one time. He pops them all in a rotation. Then it's the Goblin Sapper Charge before using Sinister Strike again. So as you saw in that damage done chart, he actually does a few separate things here before he uses another Sinister Strike. And that is going to be the Goblin Sapper Charge and all of his cooldowns to make sure that he does as much damage as possible for the rest of the fight. The next thing you're going to notice is that before he actually runs out of energy, right at the beginning, right as he's burning the boss, he has a little burn phase where he uses all of his cooldowns, uses both Sinister Strikes, and then actually uses Thistle Tea to restore energy with another Sinister Strike before getting into Eviscerates. This is pretty much a textbook fight where he absolutely uses as much uptime during all abilities as possible, which really is getting your Sinister Strike up and your Slice and Dice up right away, and then using all of your abilities possible, and then just going and doing as much damage as possible, as fast as possible. Another thing that really pushes these parses up there is really good RNG, which is both of his Eviscerates crit, which is insane for a short fight. That's going to do so much for you. And also, he got a really good crit percentage, almost 60% crit on his melees, and he only missed one melee, which is probably an offhand swing. So next you can kind of break it down by looking at the timeline view of the casts, which is right up here, timeline. And you can just see Sinister Strike, Slice and Dice, Adrenaline Rush, Blade Flurry, Blood Fury, Sapper Charge, Sinister Strike, Restore Energy with their Thistle Tea, Sinister Strike, Eviscerate. He's actually only using 3-point Eviscerates on this fight. Both of his Eviscerates are 3-point. He could have actually probably gone for a 4-point Eviscerate right here at the end, which could have been even better if that had crit. But he was trying to use it all while he still had Blood Fury up and all in his burst phase. So that is his 100 parse on this fight. The absolute best parse in the world on Razorgore is from this fight, and that's exactly how he did it. Now, moving on to the next boss, we're going to look at someone else who has 100 parse, which is actually going to be the rogue Narur. Narur put up this 100 parse last week in the APES speed run, and it was actually unreal, and it's 2,895 DPS, so 2,900 DPS. So we're going to look at exactly how he did that as well. And this is something that I talked about really briefly in the other speedruns, and I've talked about on stream as well because people wanted me to break that down. But he is an Alliance rogue, so he doesn't have Wind Fury. He's not even thinking about Wind Fury. All he's doing here is focusing on backstabs and his instant poison. So you're going to actually check it out where he uses Venomous Totem. And I will make a video going over specifically exactly what totems to use in what different situations and when different totems can be swapped out and be BiS, because people have been asking me about that as well. But a lot of people will use Venomous Totem on this fight, especially as Alliance, to pump their numbers. He also obviously has the Grand Marshal weapons. You're almost always going to see that the very, very best top people in the world have the GM weapons. They are just such a big upgrade over anyone else and anything else in the game. He's actually not waiting at all to do any DPS. He's instantly damaging the boss. If you're looking at this in the graph view, you can see the downtime in between the backstabs. So looking at it from this view, again, we can see like right here is going to be a global, and that global is used on Slice and Dice just to keep Slice and Dice up. And then right back here is going to be another global on Slice and Dice. We're going to go through that on the casts, and we're going to look at it on the timeline view as well. But before I move away from this view, I want you guys to look at something very, very significant. And this is actually going to be like the biggest thing to take away if you're trying to get this 100 parses, like the highest threshold of 99s. You can obviously almost always get really, really good 99s, but to get the god parses, you're going to need really, really good RNG. And that means he didn't miss any of his backstabs, so there was none of those unlucky dodges or anything like that. And his crit percentage on his backstabs was 81.3, which is amazing. And so he had very good RNG with crits. The average hit of his backstabs was 2.1k damage. He also had 60-ish%, almost 60, with 56.7% crit on his melee, which gave him another average hit of 654. So he got 1,000 DPS just from his melees. He literally got 1,000 DPS just from his melee damage. And then another 1.7 thousand DPS from his backstabs. And on top of that, we have, of course, the instant poison. So looking over to his cast, you can see that if I enable Slice and Dice, he casts Slice and Dice twice, and that's the only thing else he does in this fight, right? He's at that threshold of having enough attack power to not need to do anything other than backstab and Slice and Dice. You're not doing any eviscerates. Right here, something happened which held him back for a split second. So you can actually see that he missed a slight bit of a global right there. With this fight being as short as it was, 18 seconds, he could have actually done double backstab and then a Slice and Dice before anything else. The takeaway there would be that he wouldn't have had to renew Slice and Dice at the end, and he would have saved himself a global. But that's like the play here, right, guys? It's a backstab. You instantly want to get Slice and Dice up on this fight, and if your fight is extremely short, you can go for a double backstab before a Slice and Dice, but you want Slice and Dice basically up at 100% of the time, and if you have enough attack power, you are going to do nothing other than backstab and Slice and Dice on this fight. Looking over at his buffs, he precasted Blade Flurry and Venomous Totem, so both of those were up for pretty much the entire time of the fight. He gets a cast of Holy Strength to proc from his Crusader on the actual first attack. It only actually drops off at the very end. So he pretty much has Crusader proc up the entire time as well. So again, a big takeaway I want you guys to have from these is if you want to learn how to improve, you can always look at the best parses in the world, and then you can actually break down multiple of them and see exactly what people are doing at what times, what is the most optimal rotation on each fight, and how people are using their cooldowns and maximizing their DPS. Next up, we're gonna look at Exander, and Exander is another insanely good rogue, and so we're gonna break down actually his Nefarian parse. I'm not going over the parses of every single boss, but if someone wants to see that, or if you guys want to see that, I can in another video, so just let me know. Here we go. We're going to look at the 100 parse that he has on the Nefarian fight, and just by clicking on it instantly, we can see there's a massive spike of damage, and this is from definitely a cheesy Goblin Sapper charge. If you're in a speed run, you pretty much consistently won't even be able to Goblin Sapper charge because you killed the boss before the ads even reach you. A huge part of the parses on Nef actually does come from a really large Goblin Sapper charge. And this one in particular actually did 27,000 damage. Out of the entirety of 125k damage on this entire fight, about 1/5 of all of that was done with one massive Goblin Sapper charge that actually crit 1 in 4 of them with about 25% crit chance, and only a few were resisted. Out of 40 mobs total, he literally hit 37 of them. So if you're trying to get a massive parse on the Nef fight, this is going to help you out significantly. If you can do a huge Goblin Sapper charge, it is just going to do a stupid amount of damage. From there, we can look at his gear where he's using the 2-piece from tier 10. He has the shoulders and the pants, and he actually kind of doesn't even have like the best gear in the world. Of course, he has the GM gear, which is obviously insane. He's rocking Bloodseeker on this fight, but he could have a lot better gear. So that's to say, right? If you have a god parse, or if you're just a really insane player like Exander is, a beautiful parse can happen for anyone. You don't have to have the best gear in the world, and he consistently performs at the highest level in the entire game on this character without having the best gear in the entire world. Again, if we look at the timeline view of his damage, you can see that most of the damage is that huge Sapper charge, and he starts actually DPSing the boss almost 3.5 seconds late, 3.2 seconds late by the looks of it. And so that's pretty much from just positioning, getting into position with the boss itself. And there you have it, guys. That is a log review, basically breaking down 3 of the best rogues in the world consistently. And of course, I'll say it again, if you like this type of content, please make sure to like and subscribe. I will keep bringing you new content every week as usual, and you can check me out on Twitch at twitchtv.sarth every Tuesday, Friday, and Saturday. Good luck out there, guys. Get your parses up and hit me up in the Discord if you want me to do a log review of yours and include it in the next video. Peace!